I liked it. Hey everybody, Mike here, and welcome to my review of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. And a lot of people, at least YouTubers, don't seem to like this movie. I don't really seem to get a consensus from anyone so far. I see a lot of people like it and a lot of people don't, and I feel like it's even more polarizing than The Last Jedi, which is crazy. I'm not going to be comparing it to the other movies at this point because I have another video planned to compare all the movies from best to worst in my opinion, so that will be in the future. But today it's just going to be all about Rise of Skywalker spoiler review because I know that you guys don't care about my spoiler-free review because you all have seen it already. So we're going to be talking spoilers today. We're going to dive right into it. I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible because I know you've all seen different Star Wars reviews so far, and I'm just another one. So we're gonna keep it short. I'm gonna try to do rapid fire through my thoughts, and let's begin. So let's talk about the things that I liked, and we'll start off by talking briefly about Leia and how they utilized her. I think for not having Carrie Fisher to work with in this movie, they did probably the best that you could do. I mean, you could tell that she wasn't really there at times, and then they were definitely using footage from The Force Awakens, and they were kind of splicing everyone else into the scene. You could kind of tell, but like I said, considering what they had to work with, I think they did a phenomenal job with that. They handled her death very well. I'm sure it probably would have been a little bit better, of course, with her death if she was there to actually act it. But for what they had, and it just worked out perfectly in my opinion. Also, the return of Landau was great. Landau was great in this movie. I've seen some other YouTubers talk about how like in interviews and stuff he just seems a lot different than his younger days. But he came into this role and he just nailed it. He was back to being Landau. Did a great job with that. Also, the trio vibe we got from Rey, Finn, and Poe, which had been absent from the first two movies. This also goes into a dislike of this movie a little bit because I'll get into that later. But the fact that they were together and those are our main characters of this sequel trilogy, and to finally see them all acting as a team together was just great, and I feel like it really upped the dynamic of those three in this movie. I think they did a great job with that. Kylo Ren and ultimately Ben Solo's arc in this movie, he has been I'd say my favorite prequel trilogy character, and I think this just cemented it even more. I really like Kylo Ren and Ben Solo, of course, and the way they handled his arc in this one, the turn from the dark side to the light side, I don't think was like cheesy. I don't think it was too much of uh, a a copy of Darth Vader. I think it was able to form into its own thing enough, which was great. And I think that it happened at a great time in the movie. It didn't happen too late, it didn't happen too early. And jumping off of what happened in The Last Jedi, I just think that it was a great progression in his character. And also the fact that both he and Leia disappeared at the same time at the end. That was really cool, and I think that was a nice touch. And furthering Kylo Ren's arc, of course, was the projection of Han Solo, which was such a cool surprise. Was not expecting that at all. Came into this film almost completely blind, so that was a complete shocker. And I was so glad to see Harrison Ford back, even though it seemed like he was done after Episode 7. So seeing that was really neat. Nearly a tearjerker. It was such a great moment in the movie. It was probably one of my favorites, definitely. Just being able to see that conversation mirror what happened in The Force Awakens, but have a totally different outcome, and have Leia kind of be a part of that. So that was really neat, really cool to see. I thought that the comedy was pretty solid in this movie, except of course the "They Fly Now" scene, which they released before the movie came out as a clip. That was probably the only joke that really didn't land with me. Land and fly. Um, But yeah, other than that, I think the comedy was great. C3PO really stood out in this one. I just loved his humor in this, especially the one time where they all kind of looked back at him, and then he was like, that was really funny. I really enjoyed anything the C3PO was in this one. Um, Also, the little joke of Luke catching the lightsaber that Rey throws, I thought that was pretty humorous considering what happened in The Last Jedi. And he even had the line, it was like, Jedi should treat their lightsaber with more respect. I thought that was great. The connection of Rey and Kylo to the Emperor and Darth Vader, they were both the grandchildren of these two main figures in the original trilogy. I thought that was really cool, and I did kind of think back to Episode 7, when Episode 7 first came out, that I was like, well, Rey might be the granddaughter of the Emperor, because it kind of makes sense. That's why she's so powerful, and then ultimately that's what ended up happening. So I kind of had a little bit of a suspicion even way back then, and ultimately ended up coming true, which is pretty neat. Now let's go into a little bit of my dislikes. Now, when I was talking about the trio and how I love them being together, that was also a problem because we needed to see a little more of that in The Last Jedi, and then maybe even in The Force Awakens as well. I mean, I've heard rumors that Poe was originally supposed to die in The Force Awakens, and they decided to bring him back, so I think that they should have brought him into the fold more with the trio in The Last Jedi, and then we would have seen that gradually progress in The Rise of Skywalker. But that didn't happen, so it seemed a little bit forced. Like they were kind of like all best friends when Poe was just kind of, meeting Rey for the first time at the end of Last Jedi. So that was, they could have worked on that a little bit earlier in the franchise. Also, I wish they teased Palpatine earlier, but then I also think that comes down to them not knowing that they were going to be using Palpatine. I don't think that was in Rian Johnson's plan, but I think that was in J.J. Abrams' plan, and they kind of shoved that in last second. I think a little bit of a tease at the end of The Last Jedi would have even gone miles more than, seeing him for the first time at the beginning of The Rise of Skywalker. Also, I think they did Rose a little dirty in this movie. They kind of pulled a Jar Jar with her, where they, the fans disliked her in the last movie, and then we're going to just kind of push her to the side in this one, kind of like what they did with Jar Jar. And that's a little disappointing because, I wasn't a big fan of Rose in The Last Jedi, but I would have liked to see that character redeemed in The Rise of Skywalker rather than just being pushed to the side. So have her have more to do, but be a better character than what we saw previously, and redeem that character. But instead, she was just, like I said, kind of pushed to the side, which is a little unfortunate. Also, I don't think they properly used Finn in this trilogy to the best of their abilities. We saw Finn in this one kind of get a little more character development, being in the fact that he is possibly Force sensitive. But I feel like there were so many different ways they could take Finn, and they kind of kept pulling him in different directions, especially even in relationships with the other characters. I mean, like, we had a possible romance with Finn and Rey in The Force Awakens, and then it kind of switched over to Rose in The Last Jedi, even though we're kind of not sure if Finn had felt the same way, because he definitely friend-zoned her by the time The Rise of Skywalker came around. And then we might have had a little bit of likability between him and that new stormtrooper lady who they met later on in their journey about midway through the movie. Pulling in different directions of Finn romantically was kind of strange because it's like they didn't really know what they wanted to go with. And then also the fact that Finn wanted to tell Rey something, and we never found out what that was. J.J. Abrams has said that he wanted to tell Rey that he was Force sensitive. But I found that kind of be a little weird because it's like, Rey, we're dying, I'm Force sensitive. I mean, it's like, it's not something you'd really say as you're dying. The other possibilities are that him telling Rey who she's related to, because he seemed to know that she was the granddaughter of Palpatine, because Leia knew as well, and also maybe that he loved her. Those are all three options. JJ did say it was because he was Force sensitive, so I guess we'll have to take that. But I just find it a little weird that he was like falling to his death. They were all falling to their death. He's like, "Hey, I'm Force sensitive. I have the Force." But you know, it wasn't too much of a problem for me. Also, as much I would have loved to like it, the CGI for young Luke and Leia was very off for Disney. I was kind of surprised. I loved the de-aging stuff, but this wasn't de-aging. This was pure CGI, based off of probably other actors that they used as stand-ins. And it just didn't come out right, especially Leia's. Leia seemed really off. Luke was okay, but at the same time I appreciate it, because I love seeing flashbacks with the actual appearances of those actors back in that time rather than using stand-ins and other actors. So it's a win-loss for that. Also, some discussion I want to go over, some complaints I've read online. We already kind of talked about Finn and not sure what he wanted to say. Also, complaints about the Force healing I find a little strange, because we have, spoilers for The Mandalorian, small spoilers, we have seen Baby Yoda do the Force healing, so this is not the first time that we've seen it in Disney Star Wars. So the fact that Rey and Kylo can do it isn't out of question here, I feel, and I feel that's kind of a weird complaint. Also, okay, the Reylo kiss. As far as Reylo goes, I never swung either way. I was never against it. I was never for it. And honestly, I have to say, I feel like it worked within the context of this movie, following the build-up that was in The Last Jedi. I know people are swinging both ways on this. They hate it. They love it. I feel like it worked. I don't feel like it was too forced. Pun not intended. I don't feel like it was too forced. And I think that through what those characters went through together, I thought that like sexual tension kind of like worked out in the end with that. So I feel like that was okay. I'm in agreement with that choice in the movie. And then also on top of that, with Ben dying, I think that was the correct decision as well. Because if you have Rey die for good, then that's a pretty ballsy move. However, you have to look at how you redeem characters, and if a character gets redeemed after killing millions or thousands of people, whatever it is, it's kind of weird to have them live. So the common trope in movies is to have them sacrifice themselves to redeem themselves, and that's what this movie did, and I think it's very safe and very uncontroversial, because if you have, like, Rey die and Ben living, that's interesting. That's really interesting. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, she was good and she was the hero the whole time, and then he's just gonna live like, oh, yeah, I didn't kill all those people, and then just kind of live, normally. So I understand why they did that. I would have been okay with them killing Rey and having Ben live, but I think that him giving that sacrifice at the end was totally a Skywalker move, and it kind of cemented him as being like, I'm back, I'm a Skywalker, this is the sacrifice a Skywalker would make, and it fits in the line of something that Anakin would do, something that Luke would do. So I think that as far as his family goes, that works for both his character arc and the character arc of his family as a whole. Ahsoka Tano being dead. I saw some complaints about this online, about how, like, we're just finding out that she's dead through, her being a Force ghost at the end. I don't have a problem with it, because, look, by this time Ahsoka's gonna be really old, and we're never gonna have any type of Star Wars media, live action or cartoon, probably, where she's really old. So Ahsoka's probably at one point going to be dying in some type of Star Wars media when she's younger. So I don't have a problem with finding out that she's dead when she would be an older person by this point in time. So I don't have a problem with that at all. Also, the ending with Rey calling herself Rey Skywalker. I I think this works perfectly. I know a lot of people are kind of off-put about this, like, oh, well, she's, the granddaughter of Palpatine, and Palpatine has really taken the Skywalker's place, and he's won, and all that. I don't get that at all. I think that the theme of this movie was it doesn't matter about blood, it matters about who you are personally, and who you choose to be. And Rey chose to be a Skywalker. And you could say that, well, that's the rise of Skywalker, but I think also Kylo or Ben had a rise as well. So I think that the title has a double meaning. It could mean both Rey and Ben, and I don't have a problem with Rey taking the name of Skywalker at all. She obviously got the blessing of Luke and Leia, and that just kind of, like I said, brought into the theme of it doesn't matter about your blood family as long as you choose the right path. And she chose the right path. She is a Skywalker. Also, to end it out, erasing the originals. I've seen this talk a lot about how, well, now Anakin sacrificed himself for nothing. He didn't bring balance to the Force. It ended up being Rey in the end, so everything is negated from the original trilogy. And I get that to an extent, but on one hand you have to look at it as when a sequel trilogy was announced, you had to know that another character was going to bring balance to the Force. So I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with someone else defeating the Emperor at the end, because even though Anakin brought balance, balance is never going to last forever. The prophecy was that Anakin was going to bring balance to the Force at that point in time, and it lasted for a while. And then you have the First Order coming in as a new threat. And I know it's kind of connected to the Emperor and all, but I feel like if you're going to have sequels, you're going to have new threats. So, of course, what's going to be happening in previous movies is going to be something... I wouldn't say something that was not worth it. Like, like I said, Anakin brought balance to the Force for a while, but Eben Rey brought balance again. And I'm sure that, if this story was to continue, balance would need to be brought back again. So I don't have a problem with that. I think that it was handled well. Anakin even had a voice line in the air that was like, bring balance to the Force, as I did. So that was a nice touch, and I really liked that. So, overall, I loved the movie. I really enjoyed it. I really wish a lot more people could, but it seemed like, other than the internet, a lot of people are enjoying it, so I really don't get a gauge of where we are right now on how many people like it, how many people dislike it. But those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and what do you think about my thoughts? Some discussion, those few discussions we had at the end, what are your thoughts on those discussions and those plot points? Let me know in the comment section below, and make sure to follow me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And until next time, I'm Mike. See you guys.